we're about to start our meeting today, we're going to start with a message. The best way to bring love and prosperity into your life is to bless everything and give thanks for every increase which comes your way as a gift from me. As you learn to bless and give thanks for everything, you are actually putting into practice one of the great laws of prosperity and plenty. For with love and blessings comes increase. You have seen a child expand and grow in beauty and wisdom when love and blessings are poured down upon it. You have seen plants and flowers and animals respond to love and blessings. You have felt yourself respond when love and blessings are poured down upon you. Now go and do likewise to everyone you contact. You will find the more you do it, the easier it becomes, and the more easily you can open your heart until love and blessings flow from you all the time, and the very joy of living is bubbling over in you out into the world.
Dear God, we thank you for the opportunity of being here one more time with friends to learn and study about your laws, to change our behavior, and to educate ourselves now, this time, according to the teachings of Jesus. May we open our heart and our mind to study, to reflect, and to make the necessary changes to make the most of this opportunity given to us, this reincarnation. So be it.
Hello, every one of us here in karmas and all of those in a spirit, while here with us also learning as immortal beings, as we all are, granted with this possibility that we are taking in our hands for us to learn and study about the natural laws of life in the universe through the Spirits book, which the enlightened spirits are bringing to all humanity. And this unique moment that we are embracing for us to enlighten our hearts and minds, we are, as learners, on the chapter of moral perfection, that we are all imperfect beings evolving towards perfecting ourselves. And as we usually do, we carry on learning together. Everyone is welcome to bring their cooperation in terms of participation, and also doubts if they may raise as we go around. We are under the sub-item selfishness. On the question 914, where we carry on today. If we were just about to explore a bit the brainstorm regarding the chapter moral perfections and selfishness, what comes to our minds as immortal beings when we think about it? It sounds contradiction, isn't it? Moral perfection and selfishness. What comes to our minds?
I think that's showing us what you need to. I think that's showing us what you need to study and what you need to change in regards to the moral perfection.
Okay, moral perfection.
By studying selfishness, they are trying to show us and establish what are the bases of our vices, which we learned about selfishness.
Okay, would I also be right in saying that the chapter moral perfection is helping us through the different questions to understand more about morality, about ethics from a spiritual perspective, considering that we are immortal beings, and selfishness is helping us to, through the self-knowledge, to look within our own shadows, because selfishness is a shadow that we bring, and we all still are selfish to one level or another. But here, reflecting with the enlightened spirits, we can learn how to overcome it and to perfect ourselves gradually. Okay? So from that viewpoint onwards, we carry on with the question 914. The question says, since selfishness is based on personal interest, it seems difficult to entirely uproot it from the human heart. Will we ever be able to do so? What is the question about? Or how do we understand it in this stage of our evolution? There are different elements in the question, isn't it? Since selfishness is based on personal interest, it seems difficult to entirely uproot it from the human heart. Will it ever be able to do so? So what are we learning? Just fill in the question. What comes to our minds?
Since we all have personal interests, how can we stop being selfish?
Okay. How can we root out selfishness? Okay. And then they conclude by asking, will that ever be able to do? Will we ever be able to do it? Will we? Will we, as immortal beings, be able to free ourselves from selfishness as it is based on personal interest? We will, eventually. So what can we do now then?
We can get better.
Okay.
We're not like remove it entirely.
Okay, so we still can be on the process of removing, but we won't be able to remove it entirely. Why not?
Because we evolve in different speeds and we don't develop all the virtues of the moral perfection in just one existence. It takes a while.
Okay, because we have been already evolving and learning through centuries and centuries and centuries, and we use our free will and develop selfishness for centuries and centuries. Surely in one existence it will not be possible for us to uproot everything, correct? But gradually, yes. Anything else?
Well, that's what I think. I think the more we learn and less will be attached to things and people, and we're going to start to see the whole picture and everyone that is surrounding us. So we can eventually we may be able to get rid of it. I hope.
Okay, and what would be our major drive and in present for us to uproot selfishness within? What could be the major motivation?
To be
the drive?
less
Yes, to uproot it gradually, as Cynthia said. What could be the motivation from it? We need to have some reason to do that, isn't it? What could be the reason for us to motivate us?
To progress. Because I think as more as we learn about God's laws and we actually act according to it and have internal satisfaction, we have a feeling that it's difficult to explain. It is a feeling because this can be one motivation for us to do that.
Okay, so anybody else?
No, yeah, I agree with that. Basically, I think I would say like progress, and we all want to evolve. So when we deal with what we can, what we have like for our future, if we keep working, according to the right laws, then this is like something that keeps us motivated.
So as more as we study the natural laws, which we are engaging in this study or other studies that we are always constantly referring to ourselves as immortal beings, the natural laws of life, God's laws that we are always referring in, and more we study and we are willing to study. It's not because we feel that we have to, but because we choose to. We are putting ourselves more receptive to understand more and more who we are within the universe, how works the laws of reincarnation, understanding that we always will inherit our own achievements or not, and in that way we will naturally choose to overcome our limitations, our personal interests, and therefore also be willing to overcome selfishness, because we understand that as more as we free ourselves from selfishness, more we are developing what? What is the opposite of selfishness? Do we have an idea? Do we know what we're talking about? Humbleness. As more as we learn to become humble, yes, and more we feel the goodness that comes as a consequence of those behaviors, and more we feel motivated because we will free up ourselves. As humbler as we become, which is opposite of selfishness. Selfishness, we are very tied up because of the personal interests and the attachments and the controlling issues, which are all interconnected. Once we become more simpler, we feel freer. And as more freer we are, more we want to be in that way, because it impacts us in a healthy way. that making sense? So it motivates us, yeah? Now let's go through to the answer what the enlightened beings are telling us. They say, as humans become enlightened about the spiritual things, they attach less value to material things. Next, it is necessary to reform the human institutions that entertain and excite such attachment. This depends on education. What do we learn now here? There's a lot of things, isn't it? Let's see partially the first phrase when it says, as humans become enlightened about the spiritual things, they attach less value to material things. What comes to our minds? Let's explore the first phrase regarding the question.
Please answer this first part of the sentence.
Of the question.
The first sentence is affirmation that he says, Kardec says, selfishness is based on personal interest. It seems difficult to entirely uproot it from human heart. So they are explaining to us as more as we enlighten ourselves with God's laws, less attached to material things you be, so less personal interests I will have. So easier it will be to uproot my selfishness.
So between lines, following your thought, the material things, as you say here, or personal interests, are they related to material things or spiritual things? Material. Okay.
Spiritual belief systems that thinks, or I think that the material things is more important, or the result of everything in life.
Okay. I do have another question when they start, as humans become enlightened about the spiritual things. My question is, how do we humans who are immortal beings now incarnated in a body, how do we enlighten ourselves on a daily basis?
Connecting to God. And
How do I connect with God on a daily basis?
Praying.
Pray.
Prayer is a good way to start. And by studying the laws, trying to put them in action.
Okay.
Vanessa, will come back to the question that you have studied last week. Can humans find in spirits an effective aid to help to overcome their passions? If you sincerely pray to God and your guardian angel, good spirits will certainly come to your aid. That is their mission. And then you have spoke that is their mission, but it's a cooperative work. I need to do my bit. They can help me, but just myself enlighten my own self, if I can say that, because I can have these studies and I can have knowledge, but to enlighten myself, I need to open my heart.
So how do I do that on a daily basis? I would come back to the question, what is selfishness? We are talking about selfishness. What is self-interest? How will that be manifested on our daily lives? In which sort or which kind of behaviors or attitudes?
I think, for example, when you want everyone to do what you want, when you want to be the right one, when you want the things to be done your way.
Is that pride or selfishness? Selfishness, would I be right in saying, has to do when we want everything for ourselves? It's me, isn't it? I'm sorry? On the center, yes. I think the other has to do, they are interconnected, but selfishness has pretty much to do when we are self-centered in a negative, egoistic way. A lack of consideration, because it's excessive consideration from the ego state of mind about ourselves, and therefore the lack of consideration with others.
I don't care about others, what they think, what they want. I want my way.
Precisely. Yeah. And now that we carry on as humans becoming enlightened about the spiritual things, so bear in mind what we just explored now regarding selfishness. How can we now enlighten ourselves if in case we are, let's say, departing from selfishness? How do we do that?
I might be wrong, but understood we enlighten ourselves in the sense of knowing about our spiritual nature, if we put it this way, Because I was thinking about by studying the Spirit's book, for example, we learn and we get to the point that we learn we are spirits and we are here on earth for a very short period of time. And we know that we have everything that is material, it is for our good use, but it's just for a short period of time, it's not forever. But we know that we have other purpose in life, which is much more than achieving material things. I think when we are able to unite ourselves with those truths, when we say this way, I think then we will be less selfish. It's like, because I was thinking about the Spirit's book, and all the time in the emphasis, the Spirits, when they refer to the life on earth, they always say existence, short existence, and they keep repeating it. I think it's just for us to wake up.
Yeah, I think this is. Like children, as we are in the universe, and we are really fascinated by material things, they are constantly repeated. Focus on the essential aspects of life. And as more as we really become aware and we are receptive of that understanding, because it requires changing our belief systems, and we're willing on the emotional level to open ourselves really to do that, then yes, we will understand we are in a short time here to overcome our shadows or to enlighten our shadows, as Jung says, regarding selfishness, which we are studying here. We become aware that we are selfish, and that becomes more conscious on our daily living, and we choose freely to enlighten that, to change our behaviors, to change our belief systems, to change our attitudes, to change our way that we relate with us and with others. Is that for you? Then, are you okay? You can also engage behavior. Then we carry on the next phrase. Next, it is necessary to reform the human institutions that entertain and excite such attachment. This depends on education. What comes to us now? Remember the question. Since selfishness is based on personal interest, it seems difficult to entirely uproot it from the human heart. Will we ever be able to do so? And what do we learn from the following phrase now? So we saw the first one, that we need to enlighten ourselves spiritually so that we dematerialize ourselves. That doesn't mean not to live in a material world, but to live relatively in according to our way of short period of time. So what do we learn when they say next? It is necessary to reform the human institutions. Who will reform the human institutions? Huh? Us? How do we do that? What do we understand about human institutions?
For me, what counts is like family is an institution, and schools, everywhere where you can have like relationships with other people, like work and
schools, universities,
yeah,
yes, workplace,
government,
yes, communities, yeah, and now.
And yes, this depends on education. I think it's about bringing up the spiritual education, like teaching, taking to people the truth of us being immortals, like immortal spirits, and about this whole process of reincarnation and the laws of, what you do here will reflect in your future, what you did in the past might be reflecting now. And just, I think with this knowledge, it will be possible for people to start being less material attached and start to think twice about the actions.
Okay.
I just think change some institutions. If I, first of all, realize or understand or comprehend those God's words, I won't be able to make any changes outside if that's not
so the first thing, or the departing point, or the relevant point would be for us to study more about the law of reincarnation. Because if I still have in my psyche, well, I was born here, I have my life, and I will die, and that's it. The materialistic view of living, that can really motivate me as it does to live in a selfish way, isn't it? But when we talk about ourselves through the law of reincarnation, means that we are not born actually here. We are just coming into a new body, but we were created simple and ignorant by God, and we already are coming and going through different existences through our evolution pathway. So talking about the reincarnation, the immortality of the soul, and the natural laws in the universe. One of them is cause and effect. Everything what I do to myself and others, that reflects back to me. So in that way, I will educate myself as a mortal being, and even in a position as a mother or a father or whatever it is, I will also help those children or those who are involved in teaching those values. But when we look within the reincarnation, immortality of the soul, the law of cause and effect, what comes to our minds? What is the vital point of the education here? You mentioned previously the spiritual education, but what do we understand about the spiritual education? Would I be right in saying the ethical education? The moral values? Because that is lacking, isn't it? So now, which kind of values would we develop within our homes, within our families, within our workplace, within our communities? Which kind of words? Which kind of behaviors, values? If you consider selfishness, what is the opposite? Learn to be humble, learn to be charitable, isn't it? Because selfishness is all about me plus me plus me. Now we learn to be charitable towards each other, starting at home with the people that we are around. Teaching what means selfishness, what means to be charitable. It's not just giving things, it's to be loving, caring, respectful towards each other. Developing more the values of fraternity between people from different natures, different colors, different cultures. We are all brothers and sisters in humanity. We are one family, so we need to overcome our prejudice, isn't it? Therefore, we can live more fraternally, in a more respectful way. What else? We need to develop here.
Tolerance.
What? More tolerance towards the differences, which means to become more flexible within our rigidity, if we have rigid values.
You said already respect, but I will reinforce because when I start respecting others' way of thinking or others' way of living, I'll be more tolerant. I will be able to live in a more harmonious way with my neighbor. So and then comes what Jesus said, love yourself as your neighbor.
Correct. There is another vital point here, which is what else to be learned in order to reform human institutions. Selfishness. Huh? To forgive. Develop that for us, Carla.
I was thinking since the beginning, I think I was watching something this week or something I read about how God loved all of us the same way. He created us the same way. He gave us the same capabilities and opportunities. So, and then how easy it is for us to judge a person that looks to be doing something wrong, and the person that is suffering from something the other person did bad, we feel like, very sorry for the person. But both are equally loved by God, the same way we are. And we don't know what each person did in the past. So if we take this in consideration, then eventually we start to learn to be, take it easy in our thoughts. And also, like, I heard something that happened between friends this week, and immediately I was like, oh my gosh, how come this person did that? And then the thought came up and was like, let's try and look at this person as a child, the same way God looked at us. And we don't get upset when a child comes at us and just throw a tongue and pull a face or say something silly. Because as a child, you just look and say, oh my God, so cute. Sometimes we go and say, no, it's kid. But you don't get upset with that. But it's so easy for us to get upset with others. And if we just try and change the way you think, I think it might help it. And it really does. So
Yes, because when we offend ourselves, which is a difficulty in relation to forgiveness or forgiving, is because we are full of pride and selfishness. So as more as we become aware of those patterns, we get to know more how we really are, and then we realize that, and then we choose actually to do that that process of changing and flexibilize ourselves more, change the belief systems, because when we feel offended, because we have negative belief systems which are very rigid according to our rigid way of thinking, which is not according to God's laws. Once we upgrade them freely, we will feel freer, and therefore easier to forgive others, which is nothing more than learning to accept others as they are, and not as we would like them to be.
And I think when we pray, because I've been to a situation where I I never thought, oh, I'll never forgive this person, but I was very hurt. And I used to sit and open the gospel according to the Spirit and just open randomly and really pray and say, God, I really want to forgive this person. I don't want to have any bad feeling because I know this person didn't do that on purpose. We make mistakes in life, not always we do it on purpose. And even when someone do, I think honestly something wasn't right and whatever. And then after a while, I was completely free. I had peace in my heart. So I think praying also really helps.
It helps because when we are learning to be more, let's say, in a more humble way, we also realize that sometimes we may feel the difficulties and the challenges and we need help. And we, in a humble way, ask for help for all spiritual benefactors. But another point that came to my mind when I was listening to you is, when we have difficulty to forgive, where is our focus? There. Yeah? And why is it difficult to forgive if our focus is there? Is it because the focus is there? Why is it?
I was thinking about it today because I was in the office and something happened, and then I think, Jesus, we spend so much time hating each other for such a small thing. It's nothing important. Nothing is so important. For the example today, I saw two colleagues fighting because one put her color in the email that the other one was doing, and they had a fight. And it's so childish thing. And I said, it's nothing serious, and it requires selfishness. Imagine if it was something serious.
Yeah. So the focus is outside, you are right. And it's not about the focus, but it's what we are projecting from us onto the other. Because it's the way the other becomes the mirror of ourselves. So we see ourselves there because we are so distant from ourselves. Once we realize that, and then we bring the focus back, we bring the responsibility back, we bring the power back in terms of changing. When we change what is incorrect within, everything is outside correct. Not correct in the sense that things are not wrong, but we will not feel affected by it.
Is everything that's reflected in your experience a reflection of you?
Well, sorry?
Is everything that happens in the experience a reflection of you?
Not everything, it depends. As more as we evolve, the reflection usually are the negative aspects, the ego, where we see, as I said, the hate or whatever, we have those patterns. Once we expand our hearts and minds through the evolution process, then we still will see the shadows of others, but we will not have that response anymore. Because we harmonize our inner self. Is that making sense? While we are having those negative responses, it's because the work has still to be done within. But once it's done, because we reintegrate that, we harmonize ourselves, we balance ourselves, we become flexible, more tolerant, and so on. So even the wrongs, we can see that, because as more as we expand our minds, we can see the shadows, but we are not affected by it anymore, because we are enlightened our own shadows. Does that make sense? Okay? Are we clear so far? It depends on education. When they say it depends on education, what do we understand within Spiritism about education? Is it going to the school to learn? 2 + 2 is 4.
It's changing our habits. To learn. I think it's Friday, but I remember what to do.
I can hear you, Cynthia.
Changing our habits.
Change our habits.
Yeah.
So it is education is different than instruction, isn't it? What is instruction? 2 + 2 is 4. Is that not instruction? Yeah. What is education?
Education involves much more than that. It involves practice, study, practice.
Involves all our psychological, emotional dimension. Oh my God, hard work. But we have never been better as we are today, isn't it? So we need to motivate ourselves. It's all a proposal of self-knowledge, self-renewal, self-illumination, educating ourselves within the natural values in the universe. It's not on earth, not in this existence, but the values in relation to the universe, our journey in the universe. Yeah? Can we move on? So let's move on to the next one. Carla, would you like to read it for us, please?
Since selfishness is inherited to the human species, won't it always be a permanent obstacle to the reign of absolute godliness upon the earth?
Okay, let's explore the question. How do we understand it today? Because we are beings in evolution. Today we understand it in one way. Hopefully in the future we understand it in a different way, because we are all evolving. So what is the question about? Since selfishness is inherent to the human species, who can explain that?
Inherent. Does it mean we're created that way?
Is that the way we
Are
have?
we created that way? That's a kind of like question.
Yes, because it is a good question to ask. If the Alan Kardec asks, since selfishness is inherent to the human species, why have we been created selfishly?
Oh, yeah, someone.
That is your asking. Have we been created in a selfish way? Are we in doubt?
No,
Hey.
I don't think so. No, because I think God created us all to be good. But we, as we evolved, eventually, we lean towards the wrong path.
So we can say the way that we understand, we all have been created, all of us in the universe, created simple and ignorant by God. And we bring the seeds of the divine and universal wisdom within, where we learn gradually. But we already are on the journey of evolution for centuries and centuries since we are in the human kingdom. And we have a faculty which is called freedom, which means free will. And we use the free will, let's say, against the natural laws of life. Therefore, what do we do? What did we do? Instead of learning to go in the right pathway to evolve, we choose to go astray. Why? Sorry? Personal interest, because of our immaturity, because of our ignorance and the journey. Could be different aspects, isn't it? So when they say inherit, what do we understand?
I think, I don't know if it's right, but it would be in the sense of pattern of behavior that we created for ourselves in many existences. In many
Created or developed?
Developed, yes. Because we just kept repeating it time after time.
I think they are helping us to understand here when they say inherit, because again, we haven't been created now in this existence. This is just a new, let's say, chapter in our life. But we are inheriting all psychological and emotional values, behaviors, desires from previous existences. Is that making sense? In that sense which I'm talking about us, yes? We come back to a new physical body, but with the old psychological and emotional, let's say, values. And here we are to renew them again.
But just making a comparison, because it's like when we're children, babies, when we're born, we're very like open, aren't we, to everything and innocence and accepting, playful. Seems like something went wrong.
Something went wrong. You know how we understand that? Would be lovely if we would be as adults also in that state of mind, wouldn't it? Yeah. Gosh, we would really be very playful. But we are hating each other as teenagers. Right? Why is that happening? We understand it in that way. When we come back to a new body, we still are temporarily, up to around 7 years, in the process of reincarnating. So our conscious mind is still, let's say, a bit limited. And we engage in that stage where we are, but gradually as the body develops, the physical body through which we express ourselves, we connect fully through the new reincarnation process, and then is where our old tendencies start to come up again. Especially during the first phase of the adolescence and the second. This is the phase that we present ourselves as we really are. And parents become crazy. My God, what is happening to my child? It's a different being. No, it's not. It's just a different values from the unconscious mind is coming to the conscious mind. Is that making sense?
I think the more responsibility you encourage, the more you see how selfish you are. You see that there is an aspect within you which is deeply selfish. But if you integrate forgiveness, then this conditioning is always there, but you don't respond to it. So I think when they say it's inherited conditioning within the ego, that sense of self-importance. Always wants something for itself, but it doesn't have to disappear for you to respond to it.
I think it will be reintegrated because as we cannot root it out, but we will reintegrate it according to the new information that we are assimilating through the, let's say, upgrading or evolution or process of progressing. We understand things, we observe who we are, and as you just said, as less responsibility I took so far, more selfish I am now. As more as I learn to take responsibility, less selfish I will be, because I will expand my mind. So I will be reintegrating the old values within the new ones that I'm conquering. So the two together will emerge the new one. So it's almost even the energy, let's say, because we are talking about energy fields, from selfishness, which is very heavy, very dense, as more as we reintegrate that, we enlighten those fields of energy and becomes lighter and more fluent.
Because you find, even with the reintegration is there, you cannot guarantee you will not have such thought.
Yes.
You cannot guarantee which thought comes into you.
Or anything can happen in the journey.
Yeah, but the response doesn't have to be based on no selfish thoughts. You see what I mean?
I think once we understand, because we need to have new values for us to train our new behaviors. And it's more as we do it consciously and not because we have to, as a free choice, because we understand more the natural laws, we are upgrading the thinking gradually and more. That happens through the evolution. We are, according to what we study on the planet Earth, which is a planet trials and expiations, but we are destined to be in the celestial worlds in the future. And we cannot reach that level with the consciousness that we have now, where the ego is very strong. So the evolution pathway is a process, a mechanism that we are enlightening or re-educating our ego. The self needs to enlighten the ego. The ego will always be there. Or disturbances, as just Cynthia gave an example, is because the ego is very ill and very, let's say, egocentric. Now we connect with our essence, the self, and the self will help through the re-education process to re-educate those values or those concepts, and then we build a strong, vital, healthy ego, which is submitted to the self, and then we are harmonized and we flow.
I think where sometimes people get lost is they feel when they're making an effort to change that they should have positive thoughts as my friends, but it's not always the case. And it's from personal experience realize that you don't have to respond to this, wholeheartedly. It has its own intelligence.
Yes, I think we need to choose, let's say, to do good. For instance, the example that Cynthia brought about hate. My God, I noticed that is my disturbance. So I choose to behave in the opposite, to be good, to be forgiving, or whatever the situation requires. Then we are already engaging in the new way of being. And even on the emotional level, if we wait for us to feel good in order to do good, that will not happen. Because the emotional memory is the last dimension in the cycle that will change. So we learn what to do more correctly and we choose freely to do that. In that way, we will impact our emotional memory, which will change as a consequence of that. Is that making sense? Yeah? Anything else that you would like to add here? No? So let's go through then the answer. Ooh, can you see? Now we have a lot to reflect. Let's just reflect about the question again. Since selfishness is inherent to the human species, won't it always be a permanent obstacle to the reign of absolute goodness upon earth? And now we go through gradually because the answer is very, very big. The Spirit starts by saying, this is certain that selfishness is your greatest evil, but it is connected to the unqualified nature of the spirits incarnate on earth, and not to the human species per se. Let's explore it up to here. What comes to our minds when we read that about selfishness? Any idea? It is certain that selfishness is your greatest evil. What do we understand about evil? It's very bad. Very bad, bad, bad. The worst enemy, which is the cause of all, which is the cause of our sufferings, of our afflictions, of our depressions, of our sufferings and pains, and so on and so forth, isn't it? Okay. And now, but it is connected to the unqualified nature of the spirits incarnated on earth. Who explains that?
We carry that through our existence. So it's not a human being issue. If we consider the human being is just the close to the spirit. So it's our spirits that carry that through our existence.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's not about the species by itself, but us.
The spirit in itself, yeah? The immortal being. Sorry?
Nothing regards to the species.
Yeah. About us as immortal beings who are coming and going, coming back, going back to the spiritual world, coming back to earth, and then if we don't change, we are in this circle, let's say, but with the same behaviors. And the objective for us is to evolve, is to progress, yeah? And then carry on, upon purifying themselves over successive incarnations, the spirits get rid of selfishness just as they get rid of other impurities. What do we learn by that?
The
What
more
comes
we
to
learn,
huh?
the more we learn and doing good, the better we become.
Okay. What else?
Number one. No, just about saying, thinking about that we all learn to educate ourselves in creating the behavior, as we have been saying, and then it will be more according to the moral and ethical values, so that in this way we will express ourselves in the body in a more healthy way, and also
Becoming better beings, becoming beings more charitable, let's say, in all senses. Yeah? Because what do we understand about charity? Charity is giving deeds, giving goods.
forgiveness, indulgence, and benevolence.
Mm-hmm. So the global sense of charity, which is really helping us to enlighten ourselves, is to learn to be benevolent towards everyone, indulgent towards the imperfections of others, and forgiving. So we become people with those inner values which become part of our nature. And then, anything else that you want to say? No?
I mean, I would think about the question saying about self-denial. That is one of the most effective means of fighting the phenomena of corporal nature. And then I was thinking about self-denial during this week because it's like I think is what I was trying to say about enlightening ourselves. Because I was thinking about like most of the time we can read the books, but we don't put it into practice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't bring that knowledge to myself, and then I don't know what self-denial means because I'm still very selfishness. I'm still doing things on my way. And then they say here that I need to purify myself over successive incarnations. So the meaning of the reincarnation is it to me to try to learn how to do in a different way. Because in my case, I've been doing a very egoistic way, my choices, using my free will in that way. So now I came to try to practice the self-denial. And then are you be able to understand that material things is really important, but it's not the meaning or the reason for my life. And then I will understand to get rid of selfishness. And then I will understand that I will start feeling like the necessities of like my spiritual necessities is bigger than my material necessities. And then I understand when they say throughout the existences, throughout the livings, or throughout the experiences in life, and then when I choose to self-denial my own habits, my own old habits, I will understand, I will feel freer.
If I
And
renounce
then
my old habits.
qualities are,
If I renounce my old
if
habits.
I renounce my old habits, and then I'll get rid of impurities. But
What are all impurities?
impurities, what you said before, is my shadows. And that can be anything, can be devices that you have been studying, can be my own selfishness, my pride. So
What would you
everything
say?
that's not related and don't take me, don't lead me towards to Jesus or to the God's laws.
Yes, examples of impurities: selfishness, pride, intolerance, attachment. What else? Fighting, gossiping, jealousy, dishonesty, irresponsibility, and so on and so forth. Yes, all limitations, all shadows, and every one of us will find out their own. Yeah? On the earth, are there not persons who are, how do you say, divisive, of selfishness and who practice charity? They exist in greater numbers than you might think, but you know few of them, because virtue does not seek to reveal itself in broad daylight. If there is one, why would there be 10? And if there are 10, why would there not be the 1,000, and so on? What comes to our minds now? What is all this last part of the answer that the enlightened beings are bringing to us about? What is the main point?
There is an absolute goodness on earth, but there is quite a lot of goodness going on behind the scenes.
Correct. So it's behind the scenes, because in front of the scenes there's something else going on. So I'd be right to say that in reality, there's a lot of good already happening on earth. A lot of people engaged in doing good. People from different natures, different cultures. There's more and more people doing good. Unfortunately, that is still not in the media, let's say. Why? Why is that not coming up if that is good?
I think sometimes when it's there is, but we don't search for it. Because if you do search for it, there's quite a lot of things that you can see.
Okay, and why do we not search for it?
Because we have different interests.
Yes, because we still prefer the shadows than the lights, yeah. We prefer the negative aspects instead of the positive ones. Because we, humanity, we have the power in our hands to change that. If we have the courage to switch off the news, we just talk about whatever, burglars, death, killing, and so on, to switch it off. But we don't do it. And then we complain. We need to stop complaining and need to be lucid in life and do what we can do. If we unite ourselves in these good gestures, we have the power in our hands. But there is great good happening already. A lot of people who are engaged in charitable works, in really, really, truly helping. They are not concerned about nationalities, about beliefs. They are just willing to help, to do good. And that's what we want also to engage. Do you want to say something?
No, so you're right, exactly what you're saying.
Sorry?
What you're saying is very true, about you have the choice whether to do something or not.
Precisely.
Because it boils down, goes back to the power of choice, we want choice.
Yes, we do. But the majority of us, when I say us, humanity, we still complain. Oh, there's just rubbish on the TV. But don't you have free will? Just switch it off. Go read a good book. Don't we complain? The politician, blah, blah, blah. But you have a free will. Switch it off. Do something else. Go in a community, help someone, do something good.
It goes back to choice. You have a choice to complain about something.
And why do we do that?
Why do we do that? Maybe because we're used to doing that.
Yes, we are conditioned to complain, and complaining is a vice, as we learn within Spiritism, because we are immortal beings, and we keep on, as more as we complain, let's say, in one existence, how intense is that pattern that we just carry on doing? And we are quite unconscious. One starts complaining, we carry on doing the same, if we are not conscious and if we are not building other values. But we have the choice to choose other options. Options that enlighten us, options that bring goodness for us and bring goodness in the environment where we are. And in that way, we are, let's say, contaminating ourselves in a positive way instead of in a negative way. And we have a much greater impact than we can think of. Because sometimes we may think, oh my God, if I look around, everyone is gossiping, complaining. What's the point? I'm just one single being, tiny thing in the universe. No. We are very, very special in the universe. And if we all do our tiny bit in the universe, we do a lot on it.
Funny is, I'm always watching a message that someone sent to me about an Italian guy, and he's doing a lot in Brazil. And something that touched me a lot, he said, is not only about, I realized it's not only about giving money for someone to do something good for others, but give your life to it. And like it was just like one idea of one person, and it's changing 400 people's life. Nowadays, he helps 400 children. Plus the other people that still in there because they are starting their school and continue it, and now they work for that school to help others. So, and then come back to like Jesus, come back to so many other examples in the world. There were only one person, and how much they could change just because of their ideas, because their feelings, because their belief systems, and they did not allow themselves to put themselves down because of the society or because what people were saying. It for me is really important because I let myself a lot, I drink myself a lot what people say. And most of the time I don't think. I don't make my own choices, as we said. We have got the power to make choices, but most of the time I give more attention to what people say instead of to give attention to what I want and to give attention to what I really think that was right. And that's what we are talking about. That's what you really needed to do. Come back to our own selves and then ask to us and or ask our benefactors or whatever it is, what you call. What is the real meaning of life? In my life now, for sure I'm going to have like an answer, and then I will lead myself to do this. But it's not only be attached to things, and then as you said, when you motivate yourself to do something, you need to give time for it.
Yes, and again, when we start to do something or start to engage in a project of goodness, in order to free ourselves from selfishness, quite often selfishness coming from a materialistic viewpoint that is ingrained in our unconscious level, we are quite, how can I say, immediate. We want everything now. Then we start a project in terms of training ourselves to become more charitable, wiser within the universe. We start. What happens afterwards? Are we carrying on easily?
Most of the time we give up.
Then we give up. Because the old me, the unconscious mind, which is there for centuries and centuries, the patterns are there. So we need to be aware of that phase that we need to face, to go through, in order for us to fortify ourselves through the self-conviction process. I know how it works, now I choose, and I pay the price for it. Pay the price means I put myself in experience, and I go through it, and I will persist, I will develop persistence, determination, put the effort in on a daily basis, up to the point that I, let's say, break free from the old way of being. It becomes easier.
What does it mean to make a choice? What does it mean to make a choice?
How do you understand that at present?
Well, if you're blind to your own weakness and you respond to life and you call that your choice, is that your choice? No. Because I think choosing, saying I make a choice is a broad statement, because there can't be choice without awareness. So you can make plenty of choices. They are driven through, they are not raw choices, they're not coming from free will. They are driven by the mechanisms. But when there is awareness, then there is natural intelligence. Then you can say you are maybe making a choice.
The way that we understand, because we were not born now, we are born for centuries and centuries and centuries, therefore we have conditions, habits that we bring with us, and we are, as Jung said, who you think you are is this, and who you really are is this, meaning we are very unconscious yet, and all of this here, the unconscious mind is the result of the centuries and centuries and centuries of existence that we had already. We went through experiences with conditions. So we have these, let's say, values internally. Now, here where I am, I can be, let's say, completely unconscious about all of this history. Yet, even if I'm unconscious, they are behind my way of being, because they're part of it. And we are, as spirits, making choices consciously. They can be conscious or unconscious. As more as we evolve, more we become conscious of the different options that we have. And more we choose freely to choose the right ones. Because the free will is developed by the spirit through the evolution process.
What would you say is that, is it the person that evolves, or the consciousness that evolves?
The consciousness. Yes, it's the deep consciousness, the deep me.
The choice is not with the person.
Within how we study spiritism is completely down to us. Free will is a faculty which is given by God to us since our creation. And as we evolve, at the beginning on instinctive level, it was, let's say, driven by the love of God. But when we reach human kingdom, then we are now using our free will, and we are, let's say, invited in this stage onwards to use it consciously, to make choices according to the natural laws. And we develop the free will as we evolve, because we participate in that process. Anything else here? Is that clear where we are? So let's go through the next question, which is the 916. It says, far from decreasing, selfishness increases with civilization, which seems to excite and entertain it. How can the cause destroy the effect? How do we understand the question? Or what is the question about? How could we say it within our own words, which could also help others one with us here, even these incarnate ones? Did selfishness increase throughout the civilization?
Yes.
Sorry?
Yes.
Yes?
There's more consumerism, isn't there?
Sorry?
There's more consumerism. More
Yes.
materialized.
Yes.
People are educated to think using a big house.
Precisely.
It's not an economic problem, but needs to move around.
Yes. Yes. We are in a material world. We are entitled to have anything what we want. But what is not healthy is for us to become slaved by material things, or our self-worth is dependable on the material things. What we are aiming through our journey of evolution is for us to learn to be in a material world where we understand that everything here belongs to God. We are entitled to have it, so we are entitled to interact, but with inner wisdom, that we don't get slaved by. And our self-worth does not depend on having things. We can have it or not, and it still can be very, let's say, valuable human beings. Our necessities will be changing. But as you rightly said, we still are in a very materialistic society, which is still, through the education system, is inciting that in people. You need to have this, you need to have that. The competitiveness on the having level is very intense.
So it's not the money itself, because someone can be very rich and be very happy.
Precisely.
So
It's not. The money is neutral. The money is neutral, and we as immortal beings, we all sooner or later will go through experiences of richness. But we can, as more as we learn to use it according to the natural way of being in the universe, which is to, and nothing belongs to me, but everything comes from God and goes through me or flows through me in order to help everyone, then we become charitable and humble and help everyone and cooperate in the universe. We are not suffering about the money. When we are selfish, then we can suffer. We become very insecure. Oh my God, someone can break in my mansion or whatever. This kind of of thoughts, and is real in these days. So the money is neutral, and the purpose of the money on earth, let's say, if we consider us here, it is for a good purpose, for us to use it for our own good and the good of our brothers and sisters in humanity. Yes? And when we develop our heart, we become more charitable. It becomes easier for us to use the money that we get through our work system or whatever in investing in good causes. So let's go through that. The answer is very huge. I think better for us as we're coming to the end. We just explore the question. Next week we follow on the same question because we won't have time to explore it as a whole. How can the cause destroy the effect? Who knows that? Which seems to excite, entertain them. How can the cause destroy the effect? What is the cause? Selfishness. How can the cause destroy the effect? How can we do that?
Be unselfish.
Huh?
Be unselfish.
Yes, and how do we do that? As we said previously, learning to be more charitable, be willing to be more forgiving, be willing to be more tolerant towards each other, is be willing to really become a better being in the universe. And that is good for us, and that is also good in the environment where we are, being within our families, within our workplaces, within the communities, wherever we are. We become beings of more light and love and peace within. Okay? And in that way, we are coming to the end today. And always, as we are coming to the end, we close it with our final prayer. In these final moments, as immortal beings as we all are, ourselves and all of those in the spirit are with us, blessed with this opportunity of enlightening our minds and hearts. Let's express our gratitude towards our spiritual benefactors who are with all of us, who love us, who care about us, who are inspiring us for us to carry on our journey of enlightenment, inspiring us for us to dedicate ourselves in progressing spiritually. Thank you for their presence in our lives, for their support and guidance. We also express our gratitude towards our Creator God, who created everything and everyone in the universe, who created us with love in order for us to learn to love. Let's embrace ourselves in these vibrations of tenderness, of kindness, of gentleness, as immortal beings and divine beings as we all are, essential beings of goodness, willing to evolve, willing to grow, willing to progress, today, tomorrow, and always. So be it.